I can always tell when somebody's never really been in sports, never played in a team, because they don't understand that sports is urgent. There's clocks outside of baseball. There's a clock. And when you have problems in sports, you have to fix them, often on the sidelines. My games when I played in high school weren't on television. All of Tom Brady's are. And so once, twice, 3 times a year, you'll catch Tom Brady screaming and yelling and getting after people. That's called leadership. That's what the late Kobe Bryant did. That's what LeBron has done. It's getting after people. That's what leadership looks like. That's not a negative. That's not a debit. That's a credit. Or you can have the Aaron Rodgers, puts his hands, passive-aggressive, rolls his eyes. That's not leadership. Leadership is Troy Aikman. Leadership is getting after people and uncomfortably calling them out. This is amazing. Tampa Bay had no penalties yesterday. They had 11 10 days ago. Last year, they led the NFL in penalties with Bruce Arians. So the coach is still there. Tampa is defined by loose. Brady is defined by details. Something had to give with this franchise, and it did. What you watched yesterday from Tom Brady was a 3.5-hour leadership seminar. They didn't give up a sack, and Green Bay's good. They didn't have a penalty. They didn't have a turnover. 10 days after they were a dumpster fire. And Tom reamed them on national TV. 6 days later, Tom was yelling at us. This is what leadership looks like. Peyton Manning barked at people. Yeah, he barked at people. And not all leadership looks the same, but in sports, you have a clock. You have issues. They have to be solved in 17 seconds. This isn't like where I work at a corporation and the show's over and we can do calls and Zoom meetings and, oh, we're back on the field. They're punting. You got to solve crap fast. And again, some people are blamers. Leaders are fixers. Brady is a fixer. He had a friend, and this was always our issue when he got to Tampa. This was always our issue. It wasn't the new coach, the new system. That's not what we worried about. On this show, we said, I worked in Tampa. It is loose. It's cocktails at 5. The franchise has a history of just losing games they should win. The Chargers have this on the West Coast. Brady has a history of details, accountability, and he will bark at you. Not passive-aggressive. Tom will confront any problem head on. That's what leadership is. Anytime I see anybody on Twitter, anybody going, what do you call that? That's leadership. Barking at Josh McDaniels, barking at offensive linemen. You got to confront stuff. There's a clock on the issues. And I thought yesterday was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. This loose franchise, they were a mess last week. They faced the best team they'd face all year and played essentially a perfect, flawless football game, Bruce Arians after.
I can't say that I've ever been in a ball game with no penalties. And, so it was we address it every single day, and the guys addressed it in practice this week, and hopefully we can continue that trend. As a team, I don't think we had any penalties, don't think we had any sacks, and don't have any turnovers. We're going to be hard to beat. And so we kind of set a new standard for ourselves in that regard against a quality opponent.
Listen, Brady has had games with no penalties. Arians hasn't. So Arians may not remember it. Tom has. That was very Patriot-like. Nobody likes to get yelled at. But in pro sports, you know what you like even less than being yelled at? Losing. So you got to fix this stuff. And I look at Tampa in 10 days, and if you want to be cool, you'll never be a leader. A lot of guys, they want to be cool. Leadership's not always cool. It really isn't. You have to be the grumpy guy, and you have to be the yeller and the screamer. A lot of guys in sports, they want their money, and they want to be cool. And they want their shoe deals, and they want their swag. That's not what leadership is. Leadership is calling people out, sometimes on national TV. That was a leadership seminar yesterday. I can't even believe Tampa, 11 penalties to 0. What? That just doesn't happen in the NFL. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Maybe they're onto something down in Tampa with that cocktails at 5 thing. Seems to be serving their sports teams pretty well.
Yeah, they've had a very good
Lightning.
year. After a bad history, they've had a great 12 months.
The Rays. So Jimmy Garoppolo was benched last week for the second half against the Dolphins, but he bounced back yesterday in the 49ers' 24-16 victory over the Rams. He was 23 of 33 for 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions in the win. And after the game, Kyle Shanahan said he was impressed with how his team put last week's ugly loss behind them.
When you get embarrassed like that, you can find out a lot about your team. I was very impressed with the character of our team and just how the players carried themselves and the way they came out to practice on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and really the way they responded to all of us getting embarrassed. They tried to get better this week and not worry about anything else. And usually when you do that, you can put together those type of practices. Usually the results are better, and I'm glad that they were, because I thought they really earned it throughout the week and today.
Didn't feel very competitive. I mean, that was one of those forced their will on the other team.
Rams did not look great, but they also had a good game plan coming in after a loss like that. Build it up slowly, short passes, get his confidence rolling, get the offense into a bit of a rhythm, and it worked. He was, as I said, 23 of 33, 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jared Goff, 19 of 38, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Aaron Donald also was held to 2 tackles and 1 quarterback hit, and the Rams only got 3 hits on Garoppolo, and he wasn't sacked. So that's a big factor as well. When you give him some protection and some time, they can make things happen. They're still a good team. Like, they've suffered a lot of injuries this year, and it doesn't feel like the same team as last year.
I do think, though, I really like their weapons on the outside, and they just don't throw to him enough. Like, at some point, it feels like Garoppolo is so controlled. Like, even McVay and Goff. Like, McVay, after the game, criticized his players. He never does that. I watch these two teams, and I'm like, these coaches, you got to let them play a little. Garoppolo feels so controlled to me.
But don't you kind of have to do that with Garoppolo at this point, especially coming off that injury and last week's loss? Look, the Dolphins are beating people, so it's not like it's an embarrassing loss because of the way that they lost, right? But, like, the Dolphins are a competitive team.
So if Garoppolo gets healthier, am I going to see more vertical stuff? Because I think San Francisco's got nice weapons. Last night it was like, I think I had a number like 13 or 17 of his 23 completions were 5 yards or less.
I mean, I guess when he's healthy, you have to allow him to air it out a little bit, but you also have to cater to the talent that you have and put them in positions to win. If you're winning games, I mean, look, Chicago's winning. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but they're winning. And at the end of the day, you've got a win column and a loss column, and they're in a tough division. So I don't know. I don't know that you force it on him if that's not what's working for him right now.
I just came out of that game last night, and I looked at San Francisco's schedule, and I'm like, man, they have got to open it up a little. But, they did completely control a good football team.
They're at the Patriots next week and then at the Seahawks.
Oh, good luck facing New England next week.
Well, yeah. So speaking of the Patriots, they look rusty in their 18-12 loss to the Broncos. They barely practiced over the last 2 weeks because of the team's positive test results. But Cam Newton is not using that as an excuse for a poor performance.
I'm here for one reason, and that hasn't got it. I didn't get the job done today, so you can just imagine how I feel. But yeah, I don't want this to be a pity party. Obviously, everybody knows what the situation was, and it is what it is. And I just know for me here moving forward, I just got to play better football, and that's what my job is to do.
It felt like a COVID loss.
It did.
It honestly felt like, okay, this team's not practicing. They were so out of sort, even defensively. They couldn't make key stops. And I'm not making excuses, but they almost have 2 COVID losses. They have the Cam gets COVID, can't play against Kansas City, and then can't practice basically for 10 days. That was the least Patriot-looking Patriot game in 10 years.
It was, and that's why I'm not really going crazy over it.
Yeah.
Like, we know what this team is, right? We had our reservations about it before Cam got there, and they've played well in the wins that they've had, and Cam has been impressive. But yeah, they've barely practiced over the last 2 weeks, and he was out. So I'm not going to overreact to that loss.
And even Cam's mechanics. It's like Cam's a guy that you got to stay on him with his mechanics. His mechanics they didn't look very good yesterday. They just, the whole, and then they had 2 offensive line injuries, and it's like, okay, this is over. They're just, that was a COVID loss.
Their next 3 games are against the Niners, at the Bills, and at the Jets.
Well, there's a W there.
And they're now 2-3. They haven't been under 500 through the 5th game or later since 2002. That was when they finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs. He wasn't great yesterday, but again, I'm not going to go too crazy about it. They were out of rhythm and out of sorts, and there's a reason for that. Finally, Tua got his first NFL action yesterday.
Yes.
Finally, Tua time. I literally saw him out in the field. I was like laying on my couch, I'm like whatever hour into the day that was, and like popped up, was like on the edge of my seat. I know it's garbage time, but I'm like, I have to see what's happening right now.
Well,
and clearly, the entire stadium was reacting the same way.
Of course. Look at Fitzpatrick.
He's
It was
so
great.
cute. It was great. He came in with 2.5 minutes left in the game. Obviously, garbage time, and then we just showed Ryan Fitzpatrick cheering him on. Both of his passes were completed for 9 yards on the team's final drive. The Dolphins shut out the atrocious New York Jets.
They barely qualify as an NFL team. They're not collegiate, but you see they made a trade. The minute the game was over, they sent their nose tackle, one of their better players, to Tampa Bay. Like, they're just like, all right, let's just get rid of players. Let's get picks.
They're the only winless team remaining in the NFL.
Yeah, Jacksonville and the Jets are literally like not just rebuilds. They're like bad teams rebuilding. So, and Jacksonville, I think, has too much offense. I don't know if the Jets win a football game. Do you know they've never won a football game? Since Sam Darnold was drafted, the Jets have not won a game he didn't play. Now, he's lost plenty of games. I think they're 0-8 or 0-9. They cannot get first downs without Darnold. He's not the issue.
It was remarkably bad yesterday, but it was very exciting to see Tua out there. Everyone was very excited, and after the game, he went back out onto the field after everyone was gone. It was kind of a nice little moment, and he sat at the 15-yard line, and everyone was reporters were posting pictures of him out on the field, and everyone was just kind of assuming that he was just having a little meditation moment. It turns out he was FaceTiming his parents because they weren't actually able to be there at the game with him, so he went back out on the field to kind of walk them through the final drive and talk to them, and he posted this on Instagram, come a long way, the journey continues, #blessed. But it was a nice little moment for Dolphins fans.
Good for him. That's great. And that, by the way, Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing well.
Yeah, he's playing well. And he's great, honestly. Just him on the sidelines cheering for Tua like that. Like, he has such good energy about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And like that's so important. If he knows what the situation is, going out there and winning and playing and enjoying playing football at that point in his career, knowing that like he's grooming Tua, it's just the perfect situation for the Dolphins.
It really is. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.